My life was lonely and blue. Yeah, I was sad as a sailor. I was an angry one too. Then there was you up here.
I'd like to welcome my guest, Dr. Armaiti May.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We had you before and we learned a lot from being with you. And I wanted to ask you some questions about your animal advocacy. You're a veterinarian.
Yes.
And you're an animal advocate.
Absolutely.
And you have done a lot of this since you graduated from vet school.
Well, I've been involved with outreach on the Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade. About 2 years ago, I started an animal rights meetup group. Meetup.com has a way for people to gather together in various causes, and so the one that I started is called the United Animal Advocates of LA, and we go out on the promenade a couple times a month and distribute literature, show footage of the way animals are treated in factory farms and slaughterhouses, and we try to encourage people to at least cut down on their animal product consumption, if not completely eliminate it or go vegan. I've also been involved with gathering signatures for an initiative which will be on the November 2008 ballot called the Prevention of Farm Animal Cruelty Act. I gathered about 1,200 signatures single-handedly.
I gathered them also.
Awesome.
At my adoptions, I gathered signatures.
That's great.
I gathered a lot. It was very rewarding that it finally made it to the ballot. I was very happy about that.
Yes, so now we're trying to get people to vote yes on it in November.
Because people have no idea. What
well,
don't they know?
They don't know that pigs who are pregnant are kept in tiny gestation stalls, metal, barren stalls, barely larger than their bodies, which prevent them from being able to even turn around for their entire pregnancies, which are close to 4 months in length.
Why are they in those?
That's a good question.
What was the alleged purpose of putting them in there?
In the case of farrowing crates, which are the crates that keep them from moving around when they've already given birth, the concept behind that is to prevent them from hurting their piglets because they are so huge. They're usually about 600 or 700 pounds, and the piglets are these tiny little guys, and so they can easily be squashed by the mother. But the counter argument to that is that if they were allowed more space in a natural setting, they would not be as likely to squash their little babies.
Right.
Ever since the 1950s, when factory farming became the standard for how animals were raised for food in this country and other countries, they were denied basic things such as space, access to the outdoors, sunshine, etc. And so they were basically reduced to commodities. And
since the 50s, you said?
That's when factory farming started,
Wow.
was back in the 50s with the Industrial Revolution.
Wow.
So it really came to the fore in around the 1970s when Peter Singer wrote his famous book, Animal Liberation. He's considered the father of the animal rights movement in some aspects. So he really shined a spotlight on this horrific practice of factory farming. And this initiative is aimed at eliminating gestation crates, battery cages, and
what are
veal
battery
crates.
cages for people that don't know?
Battery cages are tiny metal cages which enclose about 7 to 9 hens per cage, and each hen has typically less than an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper worth of space, which is not even enough space to spread her wings, let alone engage in natural behaviors such as nesting, dust bathing, perching. Even walking isn't feasible for these little guys. They're crammed so tightly, and some of them develop bone problems. Sometimes their feet grow around the wire cages because they can't even move. So it's really a terrible thing that's going on, and it needs to be stopped. So hopefully with the passage of this bill.
And what about veal? That's even like the worst.
Veal crates, yes, those are the crates that enclose the male calves born to the dairy cows. See, in the dairy industry, the primary objective is getting as many cows to produce as much milk as they can,
right,
to maximize their profits. So since the boy cows don't produce milk, they are of no use to the dairy industry. So they're actually torn from their mothers on their first day of life, taken to a veal production facility, and kept away from their other conspecifics, their other fellow calves, not allowed any interaction, not allowed any exercise, sometimes even deprived of sunlight. They're fed a diet which induces anemia, so their flesh will be tender and have that texture, which I don't know what it tastes like because I've never had veal in my life, and I never will, but apparently it has a tender texture, which is considered
That
a
is
delicacy.
so horrible.
And so since they're never exercised at all, they become flaccid, and they are slaughtered between 3 to 4 months of age. So this bill will also address that horrific practice.
Oh my God.
I've been trying to get as many people to support the bill, either through endorsements or, voting yes on election day, and of course gathering signatures to get it on the ballot.
Right, does it look good? It looks good. I mean, we got it on the ballot.
We got it on the ballot, which is great. However, the opposition is really rallying their support, and of course their supporters are the animal abusers.
Right.
They've raised millions of dollars to date, and it's a bit of a concern as to what they're going to try and pull at the last minute. They're trying to scare people into thinking false things, such as this will increase food safety concerns, which is actually the exact opposite. Because when animals are crowded in small quarters,
there'd be more bacteria,
they're actually more
whatever.
vulnerable to disease. They're more stressed, which of course lowers the immune system's capacity for fighting disease.
Oh my God. What kind of work did you do as a veterinarian? I mean, with this, you learned a lot about this because you became interested in it. Oh, here's what I was going to ask you. When you're doing the outreach, do you find people coming back to you and saying, thank you, I learned something, I've changed my life? Does that happen?
There's a whole spectrum of reactions we get. Some people who walk by don't pay much attention. Others look at the screen and start crying. Others don't want to dwell on it. They don't want to ruin their Saturday night. So we get a variety of responses from people, but I think that we definitely do make an impact, because I have seen and heard feedback that reinforces the fact that there are people who are exposed to this and then decide to make changes for the better in their own diets. And just planting that seed sometimes is what we need to do, and then people will go on with their lives and make choices based on what they know. And a lot of people just don't know what's happening.
Right. I mean, that's a big thing.
And so that's a big thing that needs to be addressed, is just educating people.
Right. I mean, I do my adoptions in like Santa Monica, and they act like they don't know the animals are killed in the pound. And I'm like,
I think people push it out because it's painful, and they don't want to address that. Anything that's going to ruin their day is something they just want to push out, because it's so much to deal with.
Yeah. And they don't want their children to know anything about it. It's
But of course, this whole thing comes back again to haunt us, not only with the karma of it, but even just the diet affecting our health, with heart disease, cancer, diabetes, stroke, global warming. I mean, global warming has now been pretty much proven to be a fact.
Wow, what a surprise.
Most scientists are in agreement that that's what's going on.
Right.
And now the United Nations, just 2 years ago, actually came out with a report which showed that the cattle industry is a greater contributor to global warming than the automobile industry.
Yeah.
So by going vegan, we can actually reduce global warming much more than.
And that is not going to sink into anybody. That is like, what are you talking about? How does that get in there? How do you get it in there? What do you think is the most pressing issues, in the animal movement, welfare?
I think it really boils down to the way animals are viewed in society. That's the crux of it. Viewing animals as property, and treating them as property in our legal system, and just our culture is at the root of a lot of other animal issues. So once we can recognize that they are deserving of respect, they are sentient beings capable of suffering and joy, and they deserve our respect, we will be able to make a lot of positive progress for them.
I mean, I'm always appalled at the fact that we're endangered. We are endangering species. We did that.
Yes.
They didn't just happen to be like, they're not dying off because it was like a natural thing. It's been more our cause than anything else, and that is absolutely it infuriates me. I'm just glad I won't be around that much longer. It breaks my heart, to think that we have the right to destroy other species, or that man should have a right to do to nature what they do. It's unbelievable. Now, there's something else I want to ask you. People have animals. They want to do vegetarian dog food, cat food. What's the story on that? How can they find out about that, and how good is it for the animals? Because a lot of the animals are carnivores.
For dogs, a vegetarian or vegan diet is absolutely doable. They are technically considered omnivores, so they can do quite well on a vegetarian or vegan diet as long as it's nutritionally complete, meeting all their necessary nutritional requirements. And there are several reputable dog food companies that either make a vegetarian formula along with their other formulas, or there are a few that make exclusively vegetarian dog food, such as V Dog Food and Evolution. So those can be ordered online. Evolution can be ordered from petfoodshop.com, and then V Dog Food from...
Is there any that people could just walk in and buy that you
Yes,
know?
absolutely. Whole Foods Market sells several brands. I believe Natural Balance and also Pet Guard offer a vegetarian formula.
That's great. What about for kitties? What's
now
the story
for
with
cats,
kitties?
it's more complicated. They
That's
are...
their pain. I like kitties. I'm just kidding.
I like cats too. I have 2 of them at home. Cats are naturally carnivorous, so their bodies are naturally designed to process meat. And even if a food is nutritionally complete, meaning even if it meets all of their amino acid requirements, their fatty acid requirements, and so forth, it still can present a problem because meat is more acidic than plant-based foods. So a plant-based diet for a cat, even if it's meeting all of their nutritional requirements, can actually make their urine more alkaline than it is supposed to be, and that can lead to crystal formation, which can be a problem, especially for male cats.
That's right, yeah.
And they can actually get into trouble because they can get blocked, and that's a big nightmare when that happens.
So what would you recommend trying to be as humane as possible to feed your kitties?
Well, if someone is really committed to feeding their cat vegan, what I would advise is gradually transitioning to that diet, and then taking your cat into your vet and having the urine checked to make sure it's not too alkaline. Because if it's getting too alkaline, there may be an alternate diet that's recommended, or possibly a urinary acidifier. But that's something that really has to be done with the guidance of a veterinarian. It's not something that can just be standardly recommended across the board.
If you couldn't do that, would you have a recommendation of
Then I would say maybe someone should consider not having a cat as a pet if they find that ethically it's too much of an issue or a problem.
I hate to go there. I hate to do that. Oh, it's really difficult.
Or feed them 50-50, some meat-based food, some vegan food. Also,
what about fish?
Well, fish is also acidic. I mean, are you talking about from an ethical standpoint or a dietary standpoint?
Dietary, I imagine. I mean, tuna.
Also our oceans are being depleted. So I think it's a complex problem. But
yeah.
They are lower on the chain, I suppose, but they still do feel pain. I think.
No. But what I meant was, as far as if you have to give your cat some protein.
Yes.
Which protein would you give your cat if you're trying to be minimal? And the benefit of which protein would be best for your cat?
It's not so much about the protein source as it is whether the protein source is from a plant or an animal, because it has to do again with the acidity of the food. And meat or fish is more acidic than a plant-based diet.
Okay.
Some cats do fine with vegan food, and I've heard many success stories, but I've also encountered cases where cats do poorly on a vegan diet, especially if the urine is not monitored or if the cat has a predisposition to forming crystals.
Right.
So if someone is committed to doing that, they just need to be keeping up with taking the cat in to have the urine checked and making sure that it's not getting too many crystals or too alkaline of a urine pH.
How do we get people more interested in caring for animals, do you think? How do you think that can happen?
I think we need to show by example, lead by example, show people that we are happy and joyful. We're not just angry all the time. And that's hard sometimes because the issues that we deal with are difficult as advocates for these animals. And it's easy to fall into a state of negative emotions, of sadness and anger, which is completely understandable. But it doesn't serve the cause. And so we need to channel that into constructive activism, outreach, education. Humane education of young people is huge.
Right.
I think that's really where we need to be focusing a lot of our energy. And one of the things I do, I'm a board director of United Animal Nations, which is a animal welfare organization that helps with rescuing animals from disaster situations, such as with Hurricane Katrina and floods, fires, all kinds of situations. And one branch of what they do is reaching out in schools and giving them stories about the human-animal bond and just getting people in touch with animals. A lot of people, especially kids in inner cities, don't have access to animals. They don't even have dogs or cats. They don't understand that interaction. They don't have that.
Or they have had a bad experience because they live in neighborhoods where people let their dogs out.
And maybe they were bitten by a dog. So cultivating a culture where people interact with animals in a positive way and encouraging that, I think, is a good start. Getting people to see the connection between dogs and pigs. You know, they're both intelligent, they're both capable of suffering, they're both capable of love. Seeing that the species difference doesn't mean that one needs to be treated like an object and the other like you know, deserving of a Christmas present or something. There should be more awareness of the other animals' interests.
What do you think are, you know, the major challenges of the movement of animal welfare? What are the main challenges?
I think we need to recognize that there is a negative stereotype that unfortunately has been perpetuated by some of the actions done by certain activists who have portrayed a negative, violent image, and that is something that can be countered through positive examples, through showing compassion to everyone, regardless of where their stance is, because a lot of times when people are opposed to something, it's because they don't understand it and they haven't done enough research. Once they realize that we're all about caring and compassion for everyone and that it's all connected, the environment, animals, people, our health, it's all connected, then we can really open doors and reach out to other people. So it's a challenge. It's definitely something that, you know, we all face as activists, trying to break stereotypes. But it's, you know, it can be done one person at a time. And so the kids are responding well to this. Yes, it's really taking off. It's really being well received.
Because some of these kids, again, they have no experience with animals. They have no. I mean, I'll be at adoptions. I go, "Is my dog going to bite me?" I go, "Wow, my dog never bites. My dog kisses people. She French kisses people." And it's not been I grew up with, you know, nice dogs, and I didn't grow up in a rough neighborhood where I had animals beating me up or coming after me or whatever. And it's just interesting. And how do you think we're going to be most effective in spreading the word? Just by compassion, you say?
Vegan outreach, I think, is a really big thing that's going to make a big difference. I think there are so many facets to this movement, and we really have to choose our battles as individuals, because otherwise we'll get burned out. But in terms of helping the most number of animals for one's effort, considering we only have 24 hours in a day, I think encouraging people to adopt a vegan diet can save thousands of animals over that person's lifetime. And one of the things that I do, I sometimes go to concerts and I'll distribute leaflets, and I might hand out 100 or 200 leaflets in an hour or 2 hours. And I think that even if a few people who take those handouts go vegan or vegetarian or even cut back on their consumption of animal products, it's going to make a difference, and it's going to make more demand for vegetarian items in the stores. So that's going to really drive, you know, this whole trend towards.
I mean, people are fat too because of eating meat and and abuse of animals. It's just
that's why
it's like they're not making the connection.
And heart disease is an epidemic. Even people who are trim and fit supposedly, but eating animal products are dying of heart disease, and this is happening every single day. But, you know, the industry doesn't want you to know about it because they are concerned about their profits. So we need to outsmart them and think for ourselves.
Where do you see the movement going in the next 20 years or so? I mean, do you think it's going to grow?
I think so. I certainly hope so. I think that once Prop 2 is passed, we're going to see.
Is this the only state in the country that has that kind of an?
Well, Florida and Arizona, as well as Oregon, have already passed legislation to ban gestation crates. And veal crates have been banned in Arizona as well. But California is the first state to have legislation that would ban battery cages.
Okay, great.
So I think once that is in place, it's really going to start a national dialogue about the way we view animals, farmed animals in particular. And people are starting to wake up to this. And now that California is the biggest agricultural state in the union and is being faced with this measure, which
it is the biggest, really?
Yes,
I had no idea.
Yeah, 19 million egg-laying hens in California are going to be affected by this initiative. And
now,
so,
what are they opposing? They need more space? Are they opposing having to use more space for the animals?
They're opposing it. They claim that it will increase their cost of operations, which actually, according to their own research, it'll only increase the cost of egg production by less than a penny per egg, which is inconsequential if you think about it, because even throughout this recession that we've been having, their industry has been profiting. So it's like a ridiculous claim to say that they're going to have to suffer financially because they'll have to go cage-free or something like that. And there are already small family farm operations that are cage-free that are thriving and being able to sell their products. But I think also another important thing to recognize, even with this initiative, is that it's not a panacea for this problem. It only addresses their space. It does not address the way they're slaughtered. It does not address their enrichment or lack thereof. It does not address the debeaking, which is a painful procedure which cuts off the tips of their beaks. That? Because they're kept in such crammed quarters, they literally go berserk. And they peck at each other, because in the wild or in their natural outdoor setting where they had plenty of space, they would establish what's called a pecking order. We've heard of that term.
Right.
And when they're out in plenty of space, they can establish that one hen runs off, and they say, okay, you're the boss. But if they're in these tiny cages, they have nowhere to run.
Oh my God.
And so they can peck each other to death sometimes. So instead of allowing them more space, what does the industry do? They respond by actually cutting off the tips of their beaks.
Oh
and this is done without a painkiller. So these birds suffer tremendously. It's tender nerve tissue that is injured, and sometimes they can't even feed properly after this. And I've heard sometimes birds even starve to death.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So this initiative, although it's really groundbreaking, it's a really modest measure. It doesn't address a lot of things. And something that a lot of people don't realize is that the Humane Slaughter Act doesn't even protect birds. And birds comprise over 95% of the animals slaughtered for food in this country. And it's also very poorly enforced. There have been numerous documentations of horrific abuse and mistreatment in slaughterhouses.
I mean, first of all, how can you even say that it's a slaughterhouse? How humane is that?
Well, it's an oxymoron.
I know, it's great. How could you say a slaughterhouse is a humane place in the first place? That's crazy. Oh my God, I'm so upset. This is just, I hope people watch this show because I've learned a lot that I didn't know, and people don't know. They just don't know, but they don't want to know.
Well, there's a great resource I'd recommend for people who are interested in learning on how they can become a vegan and be a healthy vegan, and that's veganoutreach.org. And they have a resource. One of their board members is...
Well, there's people that have vegan potlucks. Maybe you can meet a nice mate. You can hook up with somebody nice that's a vegan, and that's always good. Because I guess people in LA care about that more than almost anything, whether or not they can hook up with somebody. So,
but staying healthy as a vegan, making sure you have enough protein, B12, which is very doable. There's so many farmers markets, health food stores. Veganhealth.org has a great list of resources.
And raw food is fun, isn't that fun? I love.
Oh yeah,
food.
Well, if you've got time to do all the dehydrating and
it's a lot of
growing
work.
Sprouts and all that.
I had a very delightful, one of my favorite meals I ever had was a raw meal.
I've had some raw food.
I still think about it.
Great.
I still dream about that meal. It was a really good meal that I had.
I love the raw cakes, the raw cheesecakes. Those are just heaven.
On that note, we are very happy to have had you. Thank you so much, Dr.
It's my pleasure.
Armaiti May. And you are in the area. You're making house calls. People can look for you
in the LA area. Yes.
And you'll be doing more and more of the vegan outreach, and you'll be having your own practice. But
One
you're
of
doing
these
both
days.
one of these days.
Yes.
But you are available to help people with their pets too.
Yes.
Acupuncture also, that's great.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time on Rescue Roundtable. I'm Mary Catalano. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
I'm just a walking my dog, singing my song, strolling along. Oh, it's just me and my dog, catching some sun. We can't go wrong. My life was lonely and blue. Yeah, I was sad as a sailor. I was an angry one too.